Hey, it's Christopher here, and you're listening to the super fantastic, above average racing spectacular. Hey, everyone, and before I get started this week, we're going to talk about Auto Club Speedway and Kyle Busch and what's gone on in the first five races of the Monster Energy Cup Series. And I just want to take a moment to pay a tribute to someone who lost his life last week. He's a good friend of mine, ball hockey buddy, Andrew Kelly. He's no longer with us. And it really hit me hard because, I mean, you're so close to people in your life and you see people and you don't realize sometime, and I know it sounds really like a proverb or a cliched thing to say, but you just never know how much time you have left. And I think you have to really cherish and just savor every minute of bliss and tell people who are close to you how much you love them and how much they mean to you. And just, man, it can change the course of a of of a week, of a day, a month. Who knows? It's just, you got to let people know that are important in your life, that they mean a lot to you, and you just never know when this can all come to an end. And it's a lot of heartbreak, and it was very. It's been a difficult month for me, personally, and things like this when they occurred, it just makes you realize that I always be kind to people because you never know what people are going through. And I think our friend Andrew was a vibrant person, and he always made you smile, and his contagious energy, radiant smile, was just a really good guy and really good dude. And he played for my floor hockey team, the East Coast Connection, Glamorama, and I know it's just recreational ball hockey, but we had a lot of fun doing it. And we remember the Mud Hero. We done the Mud Hero race in Ottawa in 2014, and I remember being in competition with him neck and neck, and it was a group of us that did the race together, and we were the top two finishers from the group. And I'll just never forget. I looked at some recent photos of him, and there's a picture of him and I at the end of the race at the finish line wearing our really. It's just a great memory. We're wearing our medals and posing, and he was always a kind individual to me, and salt of the earth dude. And I think he's going to be missed by a circle of friends, and he had a lot of friends too. He's a very gregarious individual. I always wore that smile, and I think it's difficult to think that I hadn't seen him in a while as he moved to Alberta, and it's really tough to think about these kind of things, and they are what they are, and it's very tough to go on sometime. But I think I think it made a little things and put a little things in perspective for me, that I'm gonna try my best to go on and live and be the best I can be. But it is really difficult, and situations like this make you question things. And so Godspeed, my friend Andrew. Last time I saw him was at a ball hockey matchup about a year ago. I was on the opposing team, and I remember coming up, and he gave me a nice, great big hug, and I wished him all the best and wished him well. And that was the last time I saw him. But I mean, I still think was a tremendous individual, and he's going to be missed by his circle of friends. And wherever you are, Andrew, I'm thinking of you, and I'm really glad that I knew you, and that we got to play ball hockey and got to hang out a lot. in the summer of 2014, a little bit of 2015. So I mean, you're a great guy, and you're just always so kind to me and so generous, and I thank you for that wherever you are today. And you have been in my thoughts all week long, and I will miss you. So we're going now to we're going to move on with the program now with the racing portion of it. So Auto Club, California, the West Coast Swing, NASCAR's traditional West Coast 3-week road trip has come to an end for the 2019 year. Kyle Busch, man, he wins this again. Two wins for him now, consecutive. Only driver, top 10 every race this season. He's on to something, man. Kyle Busch, and let's talk about it. Let's talk about Kyle Busch a lot here. He's a villain. He's a heel. But I think it's time to start giving the guy his due. I know a lot of people don't like this guy. We talked about this before, but second win of the year, 2019. He leads 134 laps of this race. This is a historic win, 200 win across all three major racing series in NASCAR. That's Gander Trucks, Xfinity. We all know how good he is. He's the all-time wins leader in both those series, closing in on 100 in Xfinity. The criticism's going to come. You know, Richard Petty, and let's talk about this. He's not Richard. You know, he ties Richard Petty with that record. It's not 200 in Cup. Will he ever reach 200 Cup? We'll see. Not enough time, maybe, but stranger things have happened. But I can't see that record. That record's safe for the King. But when you start drawing comparisons to the King and Kyle, you can't compare eras. And I've always hated comparing eras in any sport. You look at the biggest thing for me is basketball. I'm a big basketball guy, and you have LeBron James and Michael Jordan. You get that comparison so many times. LeBron is, who's better, LeBron or Jordan? You can't make that comparison. Two different eras, people. Two different eras. LeBron is the best, one of the best of his generation. Put Kobe in there as well. Big Kobe guy. Jordan was fine in his generation. Kareem, Larry Bird, Magic in the 80s. You can go on and on. You can't compare eras. What Richard Petty did, it's not diminishing what Petty did, but the competition level was at its height in the 2000s. Kyle Busch broke in the early 2000s in Cup. Competition was stiff. You still had Jeff Gordon up there. You had Tony Stewart, Kevin Harvick. You have some of the drivers that are today are enjoying a lot of success. You had some past champions there. His brother Kurt was running really well then. Mark Martin was still in the sport. So you're going to compare eras. David Pearson was probably Richard Petty's greatest rival. We know. Sort of where you see one, you see the other. I don't think Kyle really has that rivalry with any drivers. As much as he's dominated and has been the toast of the town and the cream of the crop, whatever proverbs you want to use for Kyle Busch, simply the best, better than all the rest. He doesn't really have a chief rival, as we have what is his David Pearson to his Richard Petty. You don't have that. He's had some dust ups, as we know, with Kevin Harvick through the years. He's had a share of issues with lots of drivers out there. I think he's had some issues with just about everybody. Jeff Burton, remember a scene at Charlotte and pit road after the 600, and everybody has said that about Kyle. Talented guy, but they used to question his driving style a lot. And then people will find ways to criticize him, even his win in 2015 in the championship. Well, the new point system, the new rules package, the way the playoffs, the way the playoff model is structured, that this was an easy ticket to his championship. Okay, that's one way to look at this. But you have the other argument is that it's still pretty incredible what he did to miss that amount of races, come up in the clutch and win. And at the end, you're the champion. That says a lot about the guy's character, his resilience, and overall just raw natural talent. So it's in traditional fans, traditional people who watch the sport, who grew up with Dale Earnhardt. And I've seen Dale Earnhardt. I got a chance to watch some of him toward the end of his career. Some timely demise. Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart, Terry Labonte. We can throw all these names out there. Darrell Waltrip. There's been a lot of great drivers. Ken Schrader throughout the years. Ken Schrader's more of a cult favorite, but still highly respected. Kyle Busch is better than all these guys. He's done a lot. In the short period of time he's been around to accomplish what he's accomplished, he's still not finished. He's 35 years old, people. What's left? Well, Mike Joyce said it best. He may not be yet the greatest of all time, but he's the greatest of now, the greatest of his generation. And there's no way you can contest that. Jimmy Johnson, I think, would make a strong case for that as well. But I think what Kyle's done in the shorter period of time just outweighs anything anyone's done. He doesn't have the championships, and I think that's what's incredible about this, why this is becoming such a heated discussion, or it's debated, is because Kyle doesn't have those championship trophies that Jimmy Johnson has. He's got more wins almost than him in the short period of time. He's closing in on that too. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the consistency level, it feels like this is his year too. Again, he's off to a red hot start. Had a great year last year. I was a bit surprised he didn't win the championship last year. He's done the 8 wins twice, 2008, 2018. He's got 2 wins now, already 5 races in. His first win didn't come to Texas a year ago, so he's ahead of the curve here. 6 races to tie the 8 wins, 7 to break it. This is the year he gets the 9. And the JGR Penske battle, that's heating up. It's been a battle of the ages the last 2 years between these two racing stables. They've won all the races this season. Penske and JGR are running all over the competition. And it's going to be a good battle between the two organizations throughout the rest of the year. Are they going to be standing in the winner's circle at Homestead with the trophy, any one of those drivers? That remains to be seen, but at this point, Busch is his 53rd career win. He's 1 behind Lee Petty, the legendary Lee Petty, 2 behind Rusty Wallace, another champion, and 3 wins away from claiming sole position of 9th on the all-time wins list. And his career only spans since 2005. That is mighty impressive any way you look at it. 23 away from tying Dale Earnhardt. I know it's early to talk about that. 23 wins seems like a lot, but given the fact that there's a chunk of racing left this season, he's 35 years old, people. I'd say he's going to be competitive, depending how long he wants to go. He's going to be competitive, I'd say, into his late 30s, early 40s. There's a lot. 23 wins doesn't seem like that impossible. It doesn't seem like an impossible feat to accomplish. It's just not out of the question. It really isn't. Brad Keselowski had only been winning, I think, since 2000, a little over a decade. And look what he's done. He's already collected that amount of wins that Kyle will need to tie Earnhardt. 30 away from 83. Again, these all seem like they're impossible feats to accomplish, but they're really not. He's 32 away from 85 wins. That would put him above Cale Yarborough, Darrell Waltrip. Next on that list is Jeff Gordon, David Pearson. I think when this is all over and done with, when this is all finished at 35 years old, lots of racing left of competitive racing for Kyle. He's number 2 on this all-time wins list. I just can't see, barring something monumental, catastrophic happening to this guy and his momentum. I just don't see it. I can't see anything slowing him down. I think he's like force too powerful to be denied the greatness that awaits this individual. And you can send him all of the hate tweets you want and complain about he wins all the time. And he's a heel. Motherfucker. But on that, it's time to give the guys just due. He's that good, and him, the JGR, when he re-signed with them, this is going to be a combination that's going to be a force to be reckoned with for not only this season, but many seasons to come. JGR is the top organization with Penske. It all depends who you'd ask. Who gets the advantage? Is it Penske? Is it JGR? Dead neck and neck at this point. But you look at Kyle and his wins. He's got some pretty impressive wins to his resume here. And in the Xfinity Series, won 2 consecutive going into this weekend. Well, the Xfinity Series is off. And the IK9 car, you look at the 18 car in the Xfinity Series, has had a great year in 2019. Jeffrey Earnhardt and his strong runs, when he's been in the car. You have Kyle, who's brought that sponsor to victory twice. And they're sponsoring Haley Deegan and ARCA. So the IK9 is a bit of a hot sponsor at the moment, are they not? So you look at Kyle Busch and the sweeps. You look at Bristol, how well he gets around Bristol, and this, what he's done. Kentucky, he's won it pretty well every racetrack there is in the Cup Series. Well, I'm not going to count the Roval. We're not talking about the Roval just yet, but Roval is still so fairly new at this juncture. But you look at what he's been able to accomplish in the winner's circle. It's surely just absolutely mind-blowing that this guy is. He started with Hendrick too. We don't forget about that, but he's claimed some pretty significant wins, and I just can't see, as I said, anyone really. There's any talent now. This is a generational talent who we've seen rise to the occasion and rise to superstardom. But I think at this juncture, I just can't see anyone who's going to accomplish these sort of feats other than him. Is this the last great American race car driver in NASCAR? Just very well might be. And I know it's going to draw a lot of criticism when he gets closer to that Earnhardt mark, because there's a lot of people who just absolutely have a real deep feelings and a love for Dale Earnhardt, for lack of a better term. They were huge fans of his and thought he was, and rightfully is, one of the best in the business. We know that, but just a cultural icon. I think Kyle Busch is just about ready to be, in that conversation. And so he's 6 wins away from 100 in Xfinity, if you're not counting in Gander trucks. Well, he's in the truck race in Martinsville this week too. So Penske puts all 3 cars in the top 5 at Auto Club. Logano, runner-up finish, had a successful West Coast swing, and he wins at Las Vegas, runner-up here at Fontana. Logano went neck and neck with Kyle there, and Keselowski's 3rd. So he's won at Atlanta, 2nd at Las Vegas, 3rd at Auto Club. Penske's got fast cars. I know last year we talked a lot about their struggles, that they didn't get hot until the end of the summer. Well, they're hot out of the gate here. And Ryan Blaney, so 5th place run at ISM. He had the pole at ISM. 2nd place there. Just couldn't quite. 2nd top 5 finish, excuse me. He was 3rd place at ISM. And he was 5th here at Auto Club. And I think the biggest complaint for Blaney is what will get him to that level. When you say that you're looking at the heavyweight fight between the JGR cars and the Penske cars, who is the advantage? Well, it's all Kyle Busch, right, from JGR. It's not the case. Remember, Hamlin won the 500. But you have the other teams that are struggling to catch up. And we know Truex Jr. is off to a great start with them. But Eric Jones has not really had the numbers. And Blaney, I guess, is the weaker link if you're looking at Penske. But I think what's missing from Penske really putting all 3 cars where they have the advantage over JGR is that Blaney has to capitalize on those great runs and convert those to victories, not just great runs in a top 5. I think Blaney's still struggling with being able to close in on those final laps of the race and convert those opportunities to wins, and that's what's really crippled him and makes the 12 team on the surface look like they're a tick behind the other two cars. I think this is year number 2 of this experiment. When you're going to go back to had he stayed with the Wood brothers, well, this was the Wood brothers for the last how many odd years have been running as a companion team, as a satellite team to Penske. So this is essentially the same team that he was running when he was in the 21 car. So it's not an issue of chemistry or development. I think it's Blaney as a driver himself is developing and coming into his own, and he could be a factor when it comes to championships in a few short years. But I just think at this point he's not yet where Keselowski or Logano are performance-wise on the track, or even in that same category. And that can change, absolutely. But Ryan Blaney, I think, has the desire and the talent to get there one day. And so Kevin Harvick here is a 4th place run. His 4th place finish of the season, the Atlanta, Las Vegas, and out of the club. What stands out to me, he hasn't won yet. And I know he's been the best of the Stewart-Haas car. He's been the best of Stewart-Haas since he got there, right? But I think no wins in 2019. You're going into Martinsville, where he's won before, but I mean, I don't see him as that heavy a favorite at a racetrack like Martinsville. He's got Bristol coming up. He's good everywhere, right? Harvick is one of the great drivers of his generation as well. But the no win, I think Stewart-Haas, if you want to put them, we had the big 3 was the big storyline last season. And early on this season, the storyline, it all centers around Penske and JGR, and anything you can do, I can do better. Well, I think he will win at some point real soon, Harvick. I can't see him going winless for much longer. But the morale at Stewart-Haas Racing is sort of on the down low right now, because you don't have that. You just don't have the top 5s to match what Penske and JGR are doing, or even the wins. So they are the only 2 teams that have won this season. Stewart-Haas Racing is still trying to figure things out. And a phenomenal team. I think they will find themselves. They will get their groove back, but it just doesn't look like that's really in the cards at the moment for them. Kurt Busch, so he's legitimately turning the clock around. He's making the clock unwind. And his Ganassi, single-handedly, Kurt Busch is making Ganassi the best Chevrolet team on the tour. So Atlanta, 3rd, Vegas, 5th, ISM, 7th, Auto Club, 6th. Kurt Busch is running in the top 10 consistently every week. He looks competitive, and it looks like as if he could be competing for the championship for Ganassi. And I think this is what his purpose, this is over why he was brought to Ganassi, was to put that team over. For whatever reason, the formula is not working. And I know Kyle Larson had a shot a couple of years ago, had the breakthrough year, and was expected to do great things last season. He's been really not a non-factor this year. He's got a pair 12th place finishes. Top 10 twice. Just not impressive stuff for Kyle Larson at this point. Kurt Busch is excelling. Kurt Busch is exceeding expectation. I knew he would after the slow start at Daytona. Kurt has been everything but automatic and consistent. And Martinsville was where he broke his streak in 2014, his winless drought, and he won a race with Stewart-Haas Racing. Going to Martinsville this week, can he bring the number 1 back to the winner's circle? But they need a little more speed, and I think they're running consistently well, but only 24 laps led in those 5 races. Ganassi has to find a little more speed so Kurt can get up there and actually close in on those wins, put himself in the winner's circle. I think that's not going to be a major obstacle going. I think Kurt Busch is going to win at least 2 races this season. He's going to compete for the championship much like he did last year down to the very end, the final round. I don't know if he can get to that final 4. It'd be quite an accomplishment. As I said, this could be his own one and only season in this car. But if it continues to run this well, I'd say you come back next year. As Kurt Busch is really here, I think, has reinvented his career. Has really, and his career was looking pretty murky at best when he was released from Penske. We all know this story. Furniture Row, Phoenix Racing, climbed his way back to respectability, and that Stuart Haas was fairly consistent, won the Daytona 500. Kurt Busch, I still think has a lot of winning left in him, and I really don't think this is the last we're going to see of him. I think he will come back for another season in Ganassi next season. So Eric Almirola, this guy is clearly on top, and without question is starting to get over with the people and Stuart Haas Racing, as he's the second best car at Harvick. He's 9th place here. He started 3rd. Legitimately a star on the rise. You look at it: 8th at Atlanta, 7th at Vegas, 4th at ISM, 9th here at Auto Club. Eric Almirola, and you could shit on it if you want, but you say lack of competition, whatever. The field is not as strong as it used to be. Eric Almirola has been around a long time. And even when he was a prospect with JGR and he had his part-time run with DEI, stuck it out of Richard Petty Motorsports for this opportunity at Stuart Haas Racing, and he's making the absolute best of it. You look at his track record since the win last fall at Talladega in the playoff. An 11-race span from that race, he's got the 1 victory, 3 top 5s, 9 top 10s. That's what stands out to me the most, is the 9 top 10s. He's consistently, out of those 11 races, he's run inside the top 10, and the qualifying is even impressive. They have very fast cars, the 10 car. That's 6 top 5 qualifying starts in that span of 11 races. He's on his way to becoming one of the best, not only at Stuart Haas, but the best in the sport. If he could just find a way to convert some of those top 10s to top 5s, be there at the end for the wins. Eric Almirola is proving last season wasn't just beginner's luck with a new team, and nothing at all fluky about it, if you want to use that word, that this is a driver that patiently bided his time with RPM and went through the growing pains of that team. And that team's really in a rut too, but bided his time and waited for this tremendous opportunity he was allotted here at Stuart Haas Racing and is making the most of it. It's turning lemons into lemonade is what he's doing here at Stuart Haas Racing. So since we're through the first 5 races here, I want to give you sort of what I think stands out to me, an opinion on the best, worst, highs, lows, whatever you want to call them. This is Denny Hamlin, I think, didn't win last year. Heavily criticized. Is he going to be pushed up for Christopher Bell, who's Cup ready and should be in a Cup car in 2020 somewhere, whether it's a JGR or not. But his win at Daytona is his second win of the 500 in 4 seasons. It says a lot about Denny Hamlin. I think there's a lot left in Denny Hamlin too. I don't think if he remains here, not sure, but the honored J.D. Gibbs, the owner who one of the Joe Gibbs Racing's one of the founders of the organization and the coach's son, the 11 car was his car and his number, and for him to honor him in the winner's circle said a lot about Hamlin's character and just how important JD was to the development and the progress that JGR's made from its inception in '93, Dale Jarrett, to where it is now. It's, if not the best organization in the sport. Not champions, and Bobby Labonte and Tony Stewart won titles. Kyle Busch has won a title for them. They've had some of the best drivers race for the organization, but I think above all, and most special is this win could be one of the best wins for the organization. I know Dale Jarrett had the win in the 500. They're the only two guys, the only two drivers with the impressive driver lineup they've had through the years. And we talked about this on our Daytona episode, that the distinction for Denny Hamlin and Dale Jarrett are the only drivers to ever win a Daytona 500 for JGR. And that's mighty impressive, given that Kyle Busch has been on quite the run he has since he's joined the team a little over 10 years ago. And that brings me up to another thing I think you have to look back and commend Kyle Busch for his historic run. His date with destiny. He is performing at the highest level of his career. He is very well could be the champion at the end of this season. And it's the battle. I think that just lends itself to the battle of Penske versus JGR. In the first 5 races, you have Penske with 2 wins. JGR's got 3. You're going to see a trend here. It just maybe because there's one more car. You get 4 versus 3. Or JGR 1 is not so competitive at this moment, but had a good run at Daytona. And where Penske has the 2 wins, could have been 3rd at ISM had Blaney not been tracked down by Kyle there at the end. And the top 5s, you have 8 for Penske, 9 for JGR. Top 10s, you got 9 for Penske, 15 for JGR. And poles, well, Penske's got them there. You got Ryan Blaney's pole, so that's the 1 pole to JGR's 0. But this is going to be the trend then. JGR's, you have Kyle Busch has been in the top 5 every race. Hamlin and Truex Jr., 4 of those 5. So just 1 race that Hamlin and Truex not been in. And Logano also, give a call out to Joey Logano, who's been in 4 top 10s out of the 5 races. So this is a really good battle. It's probably going to go on for the rest of the season. Ryan Blaney could cash in as well. We get himself in the winner's circle. The other JGR cars, Eric Jones and Truex Jr. undoubtedly should win this year. So it could be a trend we're going to see all season long, just trading wins back and forth, top 5s, top 10s. It is Penske and JGR this season. It's the heavyweight fight that everybody wants to see, and I think it's going to be still made for some good racing, minus the fact that we have a lot smaller fields now, less competitive racing perhaps. But and Eric Almirola too, as I said, the second best team at Stewart-Haas Racing. He's becoming a legitimate star. He's just a little bit behind Harvick, I think, not quite in Harvick territory yet, but enjoying the best couple years of his career. I know it's still early on in the season, but the first year he makes the playoffs, wins the race at Talladega. I think he's already improving upon that. He's had a strong run out of the gate. We talked about that 11 race span where 9 top 10s out of that 11. Almirola is Almirolaing to the top. And I think if he can continue to find that consistency, and they had really fast cars too. His qualifying efforts have been very solid. It's just patience. I think he'll make the playoffs again based on if he can continue to run this well. And I think Eric Almirola is a driver that I think no longer can be seen as a middle of the pack guy or maybe someone that's just right place, right time. I think he's legitimately becoming a complete racer that can hang with the best of them in the Cup Series. And it's really refreshing to see this, and I'm really enjoying seeing his progress. And then you have Kurt Busch, who's making the clock unwind. As we said, he's really relishing his role at Ganassi. I think it was speculated for months that he would be in the number 1 car. Came to fruition in December, and told maybe a few groans that this is a bit of a downgrade from where he was at Stewart-Haas Racing. When he was at Stewart-Haas Racing, if anything, he was consistent, but then again, not quite at the level of the Kevin Harvick in his tenure there, but it was still a good championship. It was good to have 2 champions on the roster. So here, Kurt Busch brings that championship experience with him to Ganassi, and I think it was partially in part to aid in the development of Kyle Larson, who has really just fell upon some tough luck as of late. He's not quite in the title picture Had elimination, devastating elimination last year. Could not duplicate 2017. Off to a really sluggish start this year. I'm not really sure in the end what happens to Kyle Larson, but or if he's even going to turn this around. But I think Kurt Busch is giving Ganassi some legitimacy, and clearly the best Chevrolet team on the tour at this point. And Kurt Busch is, I think, going to clock a couple wins, as I said, in this car. And that's not to say that Kyle Larson. I think if they can swap setups or maybe a crew chief change, I don't know what's going to happen. But I think what they're doing with the one car is just continue that success, and I think that has to sort of translate to the 42, because the 42 is really not looked at all competitive in 2019. So some of the low points, I think Harvick not winning for me is sort of it's still early in the season. I know Harvick's going to roll off some wins here, but not quite yet. The whole entire team is not just really behind what Penske and JG are doing. Is the time to panic yet? Not just yet, but I know Clint Bowyer has not looked really well either. Third at Atlanta was his best run. Daniel Suarez, 10th at Atlanta. Daniel Suarez is duplicating the same numbers he had at JGR. As I said, it's still so early into the season that you can't be so critical of this, but the whole idea was the desire, the passion Suarez had to compete at this level, and he had an opportunity here with Stewart-Haas Racing that he might not have been allotted. But I think the issue with, and he's getting biggest headline he's had is the fight with McDowell, but we'll talk about that in a minute. It's still time for Suarez. I think Suarez might pattern what Eric Almirola did last season, and when he starts to find his footing with this team, that they're going to run up front more often. And I think, but for years, Kurt Busch made that car look fairly legitimate and consistent, and Suarez is just unable to find that same success. But it's only 5 races in. I think he's got a lot of attention recently for the little, whatever you want to call it, scrap or fight, dust up. I don't know what you want to call it, but with Michael McDowell, it's pretty entertaining. If you haven't seen the video, go out of your way to see it. Yeah. All right. So this Stewart-Haas Racing, I think, in general is going to get better, but it's still going to be much of the same, much ado about nothing. Harvick's going to head and shoulders above the rest of his teammates. I think Almirola is trending in that direction, but Bowyer and Suarez, I think, have a lot of work to do. They got to find speed, and I'm not really sure if Bowyer even makes the playoffs this year. I think it's too much of a roller coaster ride for him over the past several years, and he's got the wins. At least he broke that winless drought, but I just don't see a lot for Eric Almirola coming up. Excuse me, Clint Bowyer in the coming weeks, and prove me wrong, I don't know. So the rookie battle has been not that entertaining. I know Ryan Preece and Daniel Hemrick were interesting choices for both teams at RCR, and JTG Doherty's. They lacked very little Cup experience between the two. I think they had only 7 races combined between them before the season started. And, you know, Preece had that outstanding run at Daytona, 8th place. Ran again in the top 10 at Atlanta before that pit road, that bizarre pit road incident with BG McLeod, but it hasn't looked really strong since then either, struggling as a rookie should. As that the very limited experience Preece has, and JTG Doherty isn't JGR and isn't Penske, in all fairness to JTG Doherty. They've been around a long time, but they're just not at the level of a Penske or a Gibbs. So he's 25th in the points. He's been outrun a bit by Daniel Hemrick in the last couple of weeks, but I think still going to get the nod when it comes to Rookie of the Year at the end. That's good for Preece. And I think this is something futuristic for JTG Doherty. They want to build the future around Preece and Chris Buescher, 2 extremely talented young drivers. I think the expectations for Preece are low this season. I think he's expected to be a middle-of-the-pack guy, maybe have that occasional flash of brilliance run, but Hemrick, in the same respect, he ran really well at Atlanta, was in the top 5, then he had some issues with the tires that cost him a great finish, could have been a career best finish, which he did accomplish at ISM, 2 weeks ago. He was 18th, and just a handful of starts. I think this is his 7th Cup start, and it's 27 in the points. RCR is just still not where they need to be. I mean, I think they won a pole, and there's some, I don't know, interesting circumstances out of the club, let's just say. But if they can get the cars faster, I think Hemrick has the credentials to run up front and at some juncture. But I think it's just going to be a steep learning curve, and I think it's going to be an interesting year for these two. But rookie battle hasn't been that great so far, but it's still fairly young in the season. Other struggles, I think. Michael McDowell. So I know he's made a lot of headlines this year for all the wrong reasons. Well, he had that great top 5 run at Daytona. That was nice to see. He's really figured out how to get around there really well. You look at his statistics at Daytona, especially. In Talladega, he's good too, but in the last couple of years, and he's sort of figured out how to get around there. So he has the issue with Joey Logano on pit road for not sticking with Joey in the final run because the Road Forward team, they're family members or whatever, but not teammates. So he gets criticized for that. I mean, not his fault. Then he has the issue with Daniel Suarez at ISM and qualifying. Suarez wasn't Macho and Hogan, and it wasn't Mayweather and McGregor, but had a little bit of a fight there on pit road. I mean, I think he got manhandled there by Suarez for a bit. He threw him to the ground, but McDowell's had a rough year. It's not finished really well, and it's, he's in that critical stage of his career where I think he's never going to reach the heights that, and I thought Michael McDowell, even when he's also famous for that really vicious wreck he had when he was at MWR and qualifying at Texas. Remember that? But I think it's tough for a guy like this because you look at him. If this season continues to go the way it's going for him, he might not be in the Cup Series for much longer. As Front Row Motorsports likes to shuffle the roster quite frequently. So I'm not sure if Michael McDowell is going to be around for the long haul here, but it's not really having a good season. I think he's struggling, and he's, I think, 31st in points. So got to stay in that top 35 if you want a chance at the playoffs, So Bubba Wallace too is another driver I think that's just struggled mightily this season. Has not finished in the lead lap once through the first 5. His best finish was 22nd at ISM. Just looks really out of place. A lot of time on the track too. Unfortunately, it just doesn't look sharp, and it's unfortunate for him. He's got a lot of fanfare and seems like a very popular guy, and but RPM just is not the team. I think he has to break away from this team before he becomes forgotten. I think he had a lot of hype going in, and a lot of people expected great things from him. Didn't quite live up to that yet, but we'll see. And I think I'd like to see Bubba Wallace do well, but I just don't know if he can do that at RPM. And the loss of crew chief Drew Blickensderfer just before the season started was another crushing blow to this team, as Wallace is... I don't see this situation getting any better here. I think eventually he might have to move on from this team. But RPM is a team that's really, I think, future's uncertain to add anything going forward. And Hendrick Motorsports has struggled. As you said, no top 5s for any of the 4 drivers in 2019. Johnson has still trying to break that winless drought since 2017. Has not looked good. Chase Elliott only 1 top 5. Top 10, excuse me. That was 9th at Vegas. And then you have the growing pains of the 2 youngsters, Byron and Bowman. They're still trying to figure out the Cup Series and to be competitive. And I think this is Hendrick is, when they went to this youth roster and started to trim their roster a few years back when Gordon retired and Casey Kane left, Dale Jr. This was a team that had big name drivers on it, but wasn't really pumping out the wins and some of the finishes of the Hendricks of old. But they're sort of rebuilding, so they tore it down to build it back up. Chase Elliott is the face of this team. I think this organization for the foreseeable future. Byron and Bowman can only get better. as Johnson probably will call it occur fairly soon. Um, it's not to be critical. I just don't think they're going to be very successful in the present. I think it's more for the future, futuristic, or what will happen to Hendrick Motorsports. But at this juncture, Hendrick Motorsports is a little behind and is struggling mildly this season. And I don't expect that trend to change much, but you just never know with NASCAR one week to the next. But Chase Elliott, I think, is the most disappointing of the four, as you'd expect a lot more for him considering his strong playoff run last season, late into the season as well. He really hasn't done a whole lot. So we'll have to wait and see for Chase. But until then, just hope for the best for Hendrick Motorsports, and maybe they can reclaim some of their past glory as the season rolls on. So that's going to wave the checkered flag on this episode. I thank you very kindly for listening again. And it's been a difficult couple of weeks, and hopefully we'll get ourselves clear off the cobwebs, and hopefully we're back and better than ever soon. And until next week, I will see you.